Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something really unique. It's the sacred Fa commitment, and it comes from the world of Beninese Fa. You know, this spiritual tradition always has me fascinated, and when I saw this document, I thought it was like a window into like the core of what it's all about.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not just like a set of beliefs or something. This is a pledge and people sign it. It's for those working closely with Laurent Chenot, who, as you know, is a very prominent figure in Beninese Fa.
And it gets pretty intense. Like, this isn't your typical sign on the dotted line kind of thing. It goes deep into morality and personal conduct, even mental health. It's like the whole package.
Right from the beginning, you see the document cite the Bible and the Quran, and it's really big on this idea of serving a higher purpose and seeking forgiveness. So you can see right off the bat that there are some pretty high standards for, moral accountability.
Okay, so let's back up for a second for anyone who might not be familiar with Beninese Fa. What are we even talking about here?
Beninese Fa is a system of divination. It's a way to connect with the divine and seek guidance. It's kind of like an oracle, revealing truths and helping people navigate life's complexities. At the heart of it is this belief that Fa sees and speaks truth, transmitting sacred texts and insights for, well, living.
So it's not just about, fortune telling. It's about aligning your life with these like profound truths.
Exactly, and that's really what this commitment is all about, that alignment.
Okay, so let's get into it. This commitment lays out a whole list of sins that the person signing it vows to get rid of. I mean, where do we even start with this thing? It's like a whole class in ethical conduct.
Yeah, it is incredibly comprehensive. It covers a range of behaviors. You have some of your more obvious ones, lying and stealing, things that pretty much everyone agrees are wrong, but then it gets into some that are way more nuanced, like broutage, which refers to romantic scams, or imparity financier, basically mismanaging your finances.
It's so interesting how specific they get. It's not just these broad don't be bad statements. They're talking about very current issues.
Right.
It really shows how relevant this is, even today.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes even deeper than just your actions. It emphasizes mental and spiritual well-being. A big thing is addressing mental health challenges, things like narcissistic tendencies or even schizophrenia. It's clear they see this connection between spiritual health and psychological health.
And here's where I think it gets really interesting. They lay out the consequences of breaking this oath. And they're not messing around. Like, the stakes are high.
Absolutely. The document talks about these specific repercussions, spiritual repercussions for violating the oath, and each one has its own meaning and consequence. For example, there's Yakun Meji, and that's all about doors closing to good fortune and opening up to misfortune. Then you've got Yakun Dabla, which refers to spiritual debts and karmic reckoning.
Oh, it's not a light system.
No, not at all.
And then there's even more. Yakun Tula and Sa Yakun. It paints a pretty vivid picture of what's at stake here.
Yeah, Yakun Tula is all about losing everything you think you have. It's that rug pulled out from under your feeling. And Sayakun, well, that's the one reserved for people who betray their benefactors. So it emphasizes loyalty and trust a lot. And the consequences, we're talking business failures, health problems, even death.
They don't sugarcoat it.
Nope.
And it shows just how seriously they take this commitment.
Yeah.
It's not just about following rules. It's like aligning your whole self with this path.
Right. And all of this centers around Laurent Chenot. And remember, he's not just a spiritual figure, he's potentially a political one, too.
Oh, now you've got me intrigued. Tell me more about Laurent Chenot. What makes him so fascinating?
Well, right away, the document says he's autistic. They specifically mention Asperger's, but then it goes on to say that he is perfectly sane. It's really interesting to see them acknowledging neurodiversity like that, especially within something as traditional as this.
It's pretty cool to see that. It really challenges how we think about spirituality and neurodiversity. So what exactly is his role within Beninese Fa?
Well, he holds the title of Hounnon Akpemiako, which means he has a lot of spiritual authority and expertise.
That sounds impressive. What does it mean exactly?
It means he has a lot of power, according to the document, like the power of divination, blessings, curses, life, even death. It's a big responsibility.
Wow. That's a lot to carry. But there's more to it, right? You mentioned something about a potential role in politics.
Yes, it mentions that he might become the vice president of Benin under a future president, Maria Sahunko.
Hold on. From spiritual leader to vice president, that's a huge jump.
It is, and it makes this whole commitment even more interesting. Can you imagine a high-ranking government official who is bound by this kind of spiritual oath?
All right, I'm hooked. This is more than just a deep dive. It's like we're spelunking into a whole other world. We've got this spiritual system, this powerful and intriguing figure in Laurent Chenot, and this intense commitment. What else is there?
Well, the document goes on to talk about specific oracles and how they relate to betraying the Fa. Yekuntula, which we touched on earlier, is a big one here, and it signifies the end justifying the means.
It really makes you think about moral choices. So how does this particular oracle fit into the whole commitment and the consequences of breaking it?
Well, according to the document, Yekuntula is specifically tied to betraying the Fa. It's saying that breaking this oath can lead to all sorts of bad things: business failures, family problems, health problems, legal troubles, even dying early. It's like a warning.
Like some seriously intense terms and conditions.
Yeah.
But it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
What does the commitment actually say you have to do?
It lays out this path of transformation, both internal and external. It's not enough to just say, I won't do this or I won't do that. The person signing is supposed to actually develop good qualities and do certain things.
So it's about actually working on yourself, not just avoiding bad things.
Yeah, exactly. It's about aligning yourself with what Beninese Fa is all about, accepting it as the truth, and then committing to living a good and moral life.
It's like pledging to live by a higher code, and one that impacts every part of your life.
Exactly. And the code gets very detailed. It covers everything from how you handle your money, to being honest in relationships, to taking care of your mental health, even something as simple as avoiding gossip and being negative.
It's interesting how it combines the spiritual with the practical. You can really see how these beliefs play out in everyday life.
And it's all about personal accountability. It acknowledges that, we're human, we make mistakes, but it also says that it's important to learn from your mistakes and make things right. So there's a big emphasis on asking for forgiveness and fixing what you've done wrong.
It sounds like a tough path, but one that could lead to a better, more fulfilling life. It's not about being perfect. It's about always trying to grow, both morally and spiritually.
You got it. And this commitment is not something you take lightly. The document makes it clear that breaking it has serious consequences, not just in this life, but also in the afterlife. It's a heavy responsibility.
I noticed that the document actually names some specific people that Laurent Chenot seems to consider enemies. And it even says they might face some spiritual backlash for what they've done. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting part of this whole thing. It mentions people like Roger de Langre, David Botten, and Jean-Marie Corda. It claims that they've done some bad things, wronged Laurent Chenot, and gone against Beninese Fa.
So this commitment isn't just a personal thing. It seems like it extends outwards. It involves relationships and conflicts.
Exactly. It shows how interconnected everything is in this spiritual system. The belief is that your actions have consequences, not just for you, but for others as well.
It's like a spiritual ecosystem. Everything you do creates ripples that affect the whole balance.
That's a great way to put it. And it really makes you wonder, how do these beliefs actually play out in the real world in how Laurent Chenot interacts with people?
Right. Especially with people he sees as adversaries. And what if he does become vice president? How will this commitment affect his decisions?
There's just some great questions that we need to look into further. But one thing is for sure, this commitment is a big part of how Laurent Chenot sees the world and how he acts. To understand how it will manifest in specific situations, we need to understand both the man himself and the beliefs that drive him.
This whole document is like a glimpse into a world that a lot of us probably don't know much about. And it challenges a lot of our ideas about spirituality, morality, and the power of belief.
It really does. It makes us think about what it means to believe in something, how powerful commitment can be, and how spirituality and daily life are connected. It raises some big questions about things like responsibility, consequences, and the choices we make.
It's a reminder that even in a world that's so focused on things that aren't spiritual, spirituality can still have a huge impact on individual lives and even on the direction of a whole country. And for Laurent Chenot, his spiritual commitment seems to be a core part of who he is, what he wants to do, and how he might shape the future of Benin.
It really is a powerful example of how spirituality can guide a person, not just in their personal life, but potentially even in leading a nation.
It makes you think about how influential belief systems can be for individuals and for society. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this sacred faith commitment, what are some key things you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Well, I think it's so important to try to understand different spiritual perspectives, even if they're new to you, or maybe even go against what you believe. This document gives us a look into a world that many people probably haven't seen before, but it deals with themes that are universal. morality, responsibility, and searching for meaning.
It reminds us that there are lots of ways to see the world and that each one has its own logic and value.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows us how powerful commitment can be and how much impact it can have on people and communities. Whether it's commitment to a spiritual path or a moral code, or even just a cause you believe in, dedicating yourself to something bigger than yourself can be really powerful. It can help you grow and it can change things.
It's about living by your values, making sure your actions match your beliefs.
You got it. And finally, I think this whole exploration highlights how spirituality and the secular world are connected. A lot of times we think of them as separate, but this sacred fate commitment shows us how they can be really intertwined.
Yeah, it reminds us that spirituality isn't just about some far-off concepts. It's about how we actually live our lives, the choices we make, and the impact we have on the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. The Sacred Faith Commitment gives us this really unique look into a complex and fascinating spiritual system. It emphasizes moral responsibility, personal growth, and the idea that everything is connected. And it shows us how belief systems can be really strong forces that shape people, communities, maybe even whole countries. It challenges us to think about the role spirituality plays in our own lives and in the world around us.
I hope this deep dive inspires you to go out and explore the world of spiritual beliefs and practices. There's always something new to learn.
And that brings us to the end of another deep dive. We hope you found this exploration as enlightening and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the endless ocean of knowledge.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how we make moral choices, right? Like, where is that line?
Totally. So how does this oracle, this Yekuntula, fit into the whole commitment thing, and what happens if you break it?
Well, it says in the document that Yekuntula is specifically connected to betraying the Fae. Like, it's a warning. If you break this oath, bad things will happen. We're talking business failures, problems with family, even health issues, legal trouble. You might even die young. It's a lot.
It's like agreeing to some seriously intense terms and conditions. But it's not just about dodging the negative stuff, is it? What does the commitment actually say you have to do?
It talks about this whole path of transformation, both inside and out. It's not enough to just say, okay, I won't do this bad thing or I won't do that one. The person who signs this is supposed to really cultivate good qualities. They're supposed to actively work on being a better person.
So it's about actually working on yourself, not just avoiding doing bad things.
Right, exactly. It's about lining up your whole self with what Beninese Fa is about, accepting it as the truth, and then living your life in a good and moral way.
It's like a pledge to live by this higher code, and a code that affects every single area of your life.
Yeah, and that code gets super specific. It covers everything. How you handle money, how you are in relationships, even your mental health. It even talks about little things like not gossiping and not being negative.
It's fascinating how it mixes the spiritual and the practical. You can actually see how these beliefs play out in daily life.
It also really pushes the idea of taking responsibility for yourself. It recognizes that people aren't perfect, you're going to make mistakes, but it's really big on learning from your mistakes and then fixing what you did. Like, it says you have to ask for forgiveness and set things right.
It sounds like a really difficult path, but maybe one that leads to a more meaningful life in the end. Not about being perfect, just always trying to improve.
Exactly, morally and spiritually. And don't forget, this commitment is not something to be taken lightly. The document's super clear about that. Breaking the oath has serious consequences, not just in this life, but in the afterlife too. That's a big responsibility.
You know, the document actually calls out some people specifically, people that Laurent Chenot seems to see as enemies. And it even says that they might face consequences, spiritual consequences, for the things they've done. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a really interesting piece of this whole thing. It names names like Roger Delangre, David Botton, Jean-Marie Corda. It accuses them of doing bad things, wronging Laurent Chenot and going against Beninese Fa.
So it sounds like this commitment isn't just a personal promise. It involves other people, relationships, and even conflicts.
You got it. It shows how interconnected everything is in this belief system. It's the idea that your actions don't just affect you, they ripple out and affect others too.
It's like this whole spiritual ecosystem. You do something, and it creates these waves that change the whole balance.
That's a great way to describe it. It makes you wonder, how does this play out in real life? Like, how does Laurent Chenot act toward these people he sees as adversaries?
Right. And what happens if he does become the vice president? How will this commitment affect his decisions as a political leader?
Those are some big questions we'd have to really dig into to answer. But one thing's for sure, This commitment is at the core of how Laurent Chenot views the world and how he acts. To understand how it will play out, we have to understand both the man himself and the beliefs that drive him.
This whole document is like a window into a world that most of us probably don't know very much about. It really makes you question your ideas about spirituality, about what's right and wrong, and just how powerful believing in something can be.
It does. It makes us think about what belief really means, how powerful commitment is, and how connected spirituality is to our everyday lives. It raises all these questions about responsibility, consequences, the choices we make.
It's a good reminder that even in a world that's so focused on non-spiritual things, spirituality can still be a huge force. It shapes people's lives and even the direction of entire countries. And in the case of Laurent Chenot, his spiritual commitment seems to be at the heart of who he is, what he wants to accomplish, and how he might shape the future of Benin.
It really shows you how spirituality can be this driving force in someone's life, not just for their personal choices, but maybe even for a whole nation.
Makes you think about how much impact beliefs can have, right? On one person or a whole group of people. So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into this sacred Fen commitment, what are the big takeaways you want listeners to remember?
I think the biggest thing is understanding different spiritual perspectives, even if you've never heard of them, or if they seem strange to you, or even if you disagree with them. This document is like a peek into this world that a lot of people probably don't know much about, but it touches on these themes that everyone deals with, like morality, responsibility, and finding meaning in life.
It's a good reminder that there are tons of different ways to look at the world, and they all have their own logic and value.
Yeah, definitely. And it really underlines how powerful commitment is and how much of an impact it can have. Whether it's being committed to a spiritual path, a moral code, a cause you care about, dedicating yourself to something bigger than yourself can be a huge force for change, and it can help you grow as a person.
It's about matching your actions to your beliefs, trying to live a life that reflects what you truly value.
You got it. And one last thing I think this whole exploration highlights is how spirituality and secular life are connected. We tend to think of them as separate, but this commitment shows us they can be totally intertwined.
It reminds us that spirituality isn't just some abstract thing. It's about how we actually live, the choices we make, the impact we have on the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. The Sacred Fit Commitment shows us a really fascinating and complex spiritual system. It's about moral responsibility, personal growth, and how everything is connected. It also shows us that beliefs can be incredibly powerful. They can shape people, communities, maybe even whole nations. And it makes us think about what role spirituality plays in our lives and in the world around us.
Hopefully, this deep dive will make you want to go out and explore the world of spiritual beliefs and practices. There's so much out there to learn.
And that wraps up another deep dive. We hope you found this one as interesting and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep searching, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into that big ocean of knowledge.